Our gospel today is short, but it's powerful. It says that Jesus was in the desert for 40 days and he was tempted by Satan. So as I began to pray and think about this, I began to ask, how does Satan act in the world? We begin every Lent with this temptation story of Jesus, either from Matthew, Mark, or Luke. So we should be aware, how does Satan act in the world? Satan confronted Jesus with a series of questions. The first was about bread and physical hunger. The second was trying to get Jesus to question God himself. And lastly, it was to tempt him with power. In the end, he was asking Jesus, what do you want? What is your heart's real desire? And obviously for Jesus Christ, it was God, his Father. From that moment on, Satan knew that he would have to kill Jesus. That is how Satan acts: temptation and violence. These are the two ways that Satan acts in the world. I want to begin with a story that happened about 3 years ago in Egypt. That wasn't too long ago. There was a busload of Christians on pilgrimage. They were stopped by Islamic extremists, and they were ordered off the bus, and they knelt in the desert in the sand. One by one, they were asked the question, "Are you a Christian?" When they were asked the question, they actually had a gun to their head. Each one knew that all they had to do was say no, and they would be safe. I mean, in their minds, they were probably screaming, "Just say no." Suddenly, a peace came over each of them. All they really wanted in life was Jesus. That's all they wanted. So each one of them looked up and said, "Yes, I am a Christian." It didn't end there, though, because then they were asked a second question: will you convert to Islam? They were given another chance to live. They had to choose for martyrdom twice. All 29 Christians, made up of men, women, and children, each of them chose what they wanted. They chose Christ, and each one was shot and killed for his faith. As I thought of this event, I began to think about myself. How many of us have faith like this? They were willing to give up everything for Christ. How many of us are willing to give up anything? People sometimes get angry with me when I suggest that we shouldn't watch certain TV shows or listen to certain music. This is the first way that Satan acts. There's the question, what do you want? If that question comes back, Jesus, he cannot have that, and he will do all that he can to destroy you. Satan wants to destroy those who truly love God. However, in the United States, we are not persecuted. We are not hunted down on our way to church. Satan has a different strategy for us. In fact, I believe that his strategy for us is even more effective. Again, it begins with the question, what do you want? Satan suggests the answer. You want to be comfortable. You want to fulfill all your desires. In other words, he wants us to say, I want me. I want myself. I want my desires. We're not being called to martyrdom at all. For us, many of us, it's difficult just to drive down the road to go to the Mass on Sunday. We come up with lots of excuses. It's boring. I'd rather sleep. I do not want to go. And if we're real honest, we would say, God's not that important. I want me and my desire. You see, Christ calls us to choose him, to love him, to cry out our faith from the rooftops. Why don't we? Well, we may be afraid that we're going to lose Facebook friends. We are going to be accused of being weird. We may be teased for our faith. Or here's another. If we begin to take our Christianity seriously, we may begin to feel guilty for the ways we're living our lives. That gossiping at work, the lies we tell, the porn we watch. We might be ashamed that we drink too much, or we're spending way too much money on frivolous things. Or we may realize that we really don't sacrifice at all, and that our lives look no different from someone who is not a Christian. This is Satan's strategy for us, and it is often more effective. We are tempted with all the pleasures and luxuries ever available to humanity. Kill us? Why would Satan ever do that? There's no need for persecution. Just turn on the TV, give him the internet, and let him do whatever he wants. Why would Satan persecute someone he already possesses? If someone is already on the road to hell, make the path as easy as possible for him. Don't threaten him. Think about it. If Satan persecutes us, then there is that possibility of awakening courage in Christians. If Christians finally have courage, then Satan is in trouble. A Christian with courage cannot be shamed into silence. He has the grace of God. The last thing that Satan wants is a large group of passionate, courageous Christians in the world. However, in our world today, when we are asked, what do you want? We often don't answer God. Rather, we cling to the world. We cling to our relationships, to our jobs, our ambitions, even our phones. We don't often even think about God throughout the day. We make no attempts to conform our lives to his commandments, to walk the narrow path. Jesus says, pick up your cross and follow me. We take it as a suggestion. When we are asked the question, what do you want? There's a new Netflix show to binge. We want to make our lives comfortable. We are not even aware that the angels and the demons are fighting this giant spiritual battle all around us, and the fate of our soul is in the balance. This is Satan's plan. Do not let them think of their mortality. Let them enjoy themselves. Feed them. Pamper them. Give them everything their heart desires and distract them from God. temptation. That is our cross. That is our trial. That is our battle. Our culture seems to be totally designed for no other purpose than to give us every temptation we have ever wanted. Satan wants to distract us from God. This is the crisis of our church. We should be in such a spiritual state that we want a true and aching and insatiable desire for God Himself. This is why Christ asked us to give up everything and follow Him. How do we deal with Satan's attack? I think we begin on our knees in prayer. When we begin to really pray, really open our hearts to God, we change. In our prayer, we develop a deep desire for holy things and less desire for hollow things. Our spiritual appetites begin to grow. That negative music and TV, it begins to lose its appeal. Certain sins no longer attract us. We begin to read the Bible more. We want more of the sacred, more of the reverent in our lives. We will hate sin more. We will want to talk about God more, to tell others about Him. We will want to help and to love other people. That is what prayer does. In prayer, we are changed. All of the other situations in our lives that we struggle with, they may stay the same, but we are different. We are more conformed to Christ. This is what real prayer does. It changes us. Prayer will change what we want. We will want God. And in this, we will thwart Satan's attack. In the end, in our spiritual lives, every single one of us here will be given what we truly want. I imagine that when our time comes and we stand before the throne of judgment, gazing upon the one true God, the King of kings, the Lord of lords, seeing Him in His awesome power and goodness, dressed as He's described in the book of Revelation, in His robe dipped in blood, clutching His sword of truth, towering over us, immense and eternal. His face glowing like it did on the Mount of Transfiguration, shining forth with so much beauty and majesty that we can barely comprehend the perfection we behold. I imagine that at this moment of unspeakable joy and terror at the same time, that culminating moment of our lives, that moment that we were made for, that moment that decides for better or for worse, at this moment, He looks on us, standing before Him, trembling and exposed. He will ask one question. What do you want? This will be the first time in our lives that we are ever forced to answer that question honestly, because that answer, whatever we really believe, will be drawn out of us as we stand in that place where no lies can be uttered. How do we answer? What will we say when we face that moment? I don't think the answer is that clear-cut for us. The fear is that if we don't already know God, we will be gazing at him for the first and perhaps the last time in our lives. We will be seeing him one last time before being cast out into the dark. Why? Because our answer to that question will be, I want myself, Lord. That's all I have wanted all my life. Leave me alone. We say this because we must speak the truth. We say, I do not want you. I pray, and I have the hope that all of us here, that at that moment we will say something entirely different. I hope that we will be able to answer in gratitude and ecstasy, I want you, Lord, only you. You have been all that I have searched for. You are the answer to every question I have ever asked. You are the hunger in the pit of my stomach, the ache in my bones. I have felt a longing for you my entire life, and I have traveled through life and passed through death to find you. I do not deserve you. I have sinned. O Lord, have mercy on me. Let me come home. I just want to come home. No matter what the answer to that faithful question, God's response will be the same. So be it, my child, as you wish, and we will simply walk through the door which we have chosen. It is Lent. It is the time for us to seriously ask the question, perhaps the first time in our entire lives, and to really think and pray about the question, what do you want?